So at this point in the podcast, it gives me great pleasure to welcome our second guest onto the podcast for this evening. And our second guest tonight is coming all the way from the international region of Scotland. And it's great to welcome Paul Drury to the podcast. Well, I can't see Paul, but I did see him pop up for a second, but he's disappeared now.
I was there. It tells me the host has stopped my video, and I'm going to start my video now. So hopefully I'm with you. Can you see me?
I can see you now, which is great.
Good.
Probably takes a little while for the signals to reach Scotland, doesn't it?
yeah, absolutely. There are border checks, obviously. So.
Right, and it's thank you ever so much again for giving up your time to come on this evening. I hope you're keeping well.
I'm very well, thank you, and hope you are too.
Oh, not too bad, thank you. It's been a bit more of a sunny day today. It makes all the difference. So we're going to be speaking to you about your quick march tonight, Jubilee. I'm sure many of our listeners will be familiar with the piece. If they're not familiar with it or don't realise they're familiar with it, it's of course the tune that we use in the background for all our Band Mastermind episodes. So my first question about the piece is, could you tell us a little bit about where the initial inspiration for the piece came?
It was quite simple, really. At the time I wrote the piece, I was a member of the band at Edinburgh Gorgie, and I was deputy bandmaster at the time. And the band was having its band centenary, 1997 or 1998, I think. And I said to the bandmaster, "What about I write the band a march for its centenary?" And he said, "Yeah, let's do that." And so, hence the reason I went for something that was quite joyful, quite light, celebratory, and also hence the name. Because obviously centenary is a form of Jubilee celebration.
Excellent. A very appropriate one on our deck scenery, centenary. I don't know how you say it for 10 episodes to be talking about a Jubilee. So it's written as a quick march. What was the thinking behind writing it in the style of a quick march, something that isn't as common in our repertoire marches, rather than just a standard march?
I guess I called it a quick march because I'm pretty certain in those days, maybe in these days, I wouldn't get away in Salvation Army circles with calling it a circus march, but it's a circus march. I love circus marches. Two favourites of mine. The Midwest March, I remember buying one of my first ever CDs, 1985, Black Dyke Mills, 150 years of Black Dyke Band, and they played the Midwest March on that, and I thought that was great. All these kind of running semiquavers up the way and down the way, and top of the band against the bottom of the band, that sort of thing. And I thought the Salvation Army needs something like that because, to my knowledge, we didn't have one. So it was marches like Midwest and the circus marches of Carole King and marches like the Waltonian from like the contestant sphere that I was really trying to emulate in the style.
Great stuff. So it's great to hear some of those influences to the piece there. So Jubilee was published back in 2003. Doesn't sound that long ago, but it is quite a while now. However, I believe you wrote it in 1998. Whereabouts were you in your journey as a composer when you wrote this piece? Was it relatively early on, or had you already established your craft by this point?
I'm not altogether sure. I certainly feel that it was around about the time I was certainly into taking my music more seriously and taking my composing and arranging more seriously. So, I'd begun to have music published in the Unity series and Triumph series, singing company music as well. I used to love writing for singing companies in the mid kind of to late 90s. So I guess I was becoming more industrious. I I think I probably found my voice by that point, and my style. I think my style is quite straightforward. It's not very a lot of the time it's not very deep. It's quite, it's quite traditional in some ways. So probably it's a signature piece in terms of that, because it probably fits into the style of music that I tend to write.
And your day job isn't in composition, it's in something completely different. So it'd be quite interesting for you to tell us a little bit about where you learned to write music and picked that up.
Much as Peggy said earlier, my parents, both my parents were music leaders in the corps where I grew up. Both my grandfathers were bandmasters as well. So music was very much a part of my life and part of my childhood. And as I became more interested in playing, certainly into my early teens, I also became interested in how music was put together. At a very young age, a far too young age, I may add. I think I was 15, possibly 14, but I think I was 15. I was made the YP band leader at my corps. So I had the opportunity to look at scores and begin to understand how scores work, particularly related to the Unity series. And I had a tuba teacher at the time, Tony Swainson, who grew up in the Salvation Army and was tuba player at the BBC Scottish Symphony for many, many years. He was my teacher, and he's a really useful composer and arranger. And he used to encourage me as well to try and exercise and see if I could write stuff. And I played in quintets and trios and quartets, so I would always be keen to try things out.
And you mentioned your grandfather's influence there. His march at Norwich Citadel, in my opinion, one of the best in the repertoire.
Yeah, I love it too. A real thrill for me is I think it's the North American Brass Band Association. Both Jubilee and Norwich Citadel are on the list of approved marches, and it's quite nice because our names appear together, obviously. So that's quite nice. I like the march too.
Fantastic. The legacy lives on. So I believe this was your first ever piece to be published in the General series. As you mentioned earlier, you had already had pieces published in the Unity and Triumph series before this. But did you notice any significant changes in the style you were having to write in to adapt to the larger scoring of the General series?
I enjoy writing for the General series and for what we would nowadays call a more traditional band formation. I think the opportunity, the amount of horns we've got to play with, the amount of cornet parts, the amount of middle of the band sound, baritone, euphonium, trombone, all at the same pitch, allows you to kind of exercise quite a lot of variation in texture and also mood and style of delivery. But there is something quite enjoyable, really enjoyable about writing for smaller combinations. And I particularly have enjoyed writing for Triumph series and also for Unity series. And in some respects, for me, the hardest thing is to make something sound complete and full when you're only working with 4 or 5 parts. It's almost like we're trying to, when I write for Unity series, it's almost like I'm writing for a brass choir. We're trying to emulate the human voice. So I enjoy that. I enjoy all forms of writing, whatever I'm required to do.
So looking specifically at the piece Jubilee, the tunes that you've used in this march are Be Glad in the Lord and the choruses, I Love Him Better Every Day and Bound for Canaan Shore. What is the significance of using those three tunes?
Glad in the Lord, simply because I wanted to pick a melody that was upbeat, that listeners who were aware of the words would associate with the concept of rejoicing, because it was written for a band centenary. As far as the choruses go, I love him better every day, or as my mother calls it, I'll help my mummy all I can. I would certainly think that just fits the type of music. It's an old style march, so it's an old testimony chorus. And those old enough to remember the days when we used to have Sunday afternoon meetings and things like that, quite often if somebody was singing I Love Him Better Every Day, somebody else in the congregation would be singing I'm Bound for Canaan Shore at the same time, and somebody else would be singing The Day of Victory is Coming, because all three tunes go together and work together. So when I decided on I Love Him Better Every Day, I thought I'll stick Bound for Canaan Shore on the glockenspiel as a bit of fun, really. So that's the reason I chose the music.
And in a little bit, we'll be listening to a recording of the march. So those listening, listen out for that little snippet on the glockenspiel. Also, it's been great to see that there are lots of questions for our guests coming in on the Facebook Live comments. Don't forget, if you do have any more questions for Peggy or Paul, now's your time to get them in, because we'll be answering those in a few minutes. So, Paul, my next question for you is, Jubilee has been published now also in the New York Sextet series. Was it a challenge to you condensing the march down into these 6 parts?
Yeah. To be honest, it was one of the techniques that the march uses is first time through it'll maybe be mezzo piano, second time through it'll be forte or fortissimo, and you use your resources to achieve that. So half the cornets are maybe out the first time through, no trombones first time through, that kind of thing. Soprano cornet comes in second time through. When you're writing for 6 parts, you don't have that, so everybody's got to keep playing all the time. So it was a challenge to keep the same feel for the piece, even though it was condensed down to 6 players. I think I just about got away with it, but I had to have 2 or 3 goes in order to get it right.
Now, for me, I think the first time I ever encountered this piece was at the Territorial Youth Band back in 2011. And I remember we had a challenge throughout the week to see how fast a performance we could do. And one particularly memorable one was in the final concert at the Lighthouse down in Poole, where Maestro James Morley took the helm, and we got through it blisteringly quick. What's the fastest performance you've ever heard?
I think the fastest performance I've heard is a performance I was involved in. I was conducting a band in Scotland, the Bon Accord Band, an entertainment contest, and it was a 20-minute programme, 20-minute musical programme, and I had selected 18 minutes worth of music, and I felt it was missing something. So quite late on in the process, I added Jubilee in, but I really needed to make sure that I kept it at a lick, so that we would make sure that we didn't get any time penalties. So that went pretty fast. But I hear some stories from friends in the international staff band about competitions when they toured America over 10 years ago with the march, to see how quickly they could play it during that tour.
A good bit of fun. Now, one of my last questions to you now is, I believe that the piece appeared on national TV here in the UK quite recently. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, last summer, I think it was. I came home from work, and I had a phone call at home, and it was a lady who I didn't know, and she picked up the phone. I picked up the phone and spoke, and she introduced herself and said she was a producer from the BBC. And I thought somebody was winding me up, because she said, we'd like to feature your music in a documentary about Prince Charles. Prince Charles at 70, obviously he's the Duke of Cornwall, and they had some footage of a 70th birthday celebration at one of his homes, where I think it was the St Denis band had come along to play some music, and the producers had enjoyed when they played this quick march, which they assumed was hundreds of years old, and they probably felt they didn't need to get any copyright permissions for it. So they selected this, and then were quite surprised to find out that the composer was still very much alive. So I got a request, can I allow this to happen? And of course, such is the nature of Salvation Army music and Salvation Army music making and publishing, I had to say, I said, well, I'd be delighted for you to use this in your documentary, but it's not me you've got to ask. You've got to ask the Salvation Army, because they own the copyright. But fortunately, the Army were happy for that to happen. And it does make me chuckle that my music was featured on a documentary about Prince Charles. I'm not exactly the biggest fan of the royal family that you've ever met, so I do find that quite amusing. But I was chuffed all the same.
Fantastic stuff. Great story, that. Now, I've just seen one of the questions we've had on a live stream for you is from Chris Smith, and it says, Paul, have you got any plans to write another quick march in the same vein as Jubilee? Now, interestingly, my next question for you was exactly the same, and that was more I couldn't resist the pun, saying if you wrote a third one in the set, could you resist the urge to call it Jubilee 3?
Yeah, don't give up the day job, Matthew. That's all I'm saying. I don't know. Perhaps I will. Perhaps I will one day. I've got no plans. But I mean, I'm somebody that doesn't take my music making too seriously, and I'm not an overly proud person. I'm chuffed to bits that people like this piece of music and play it, and if I could manage to replicate that in a similar style at some point in the future, I think I would be more than happy to do so. We'll see.
And my final question for you, a bit of a personal one, but have you got a favourite performance or recording of Jubilee that you've heard?
Yeah, I've got three. Jubilee was the first piece I ever conducted in a brass band recording. When Gorgie Band had their centenary, we featured it on the band CD, and I conducted it. So that was exciting for me. The first time I played the march on a CD was with the Household Troops Band back in 2002 for an American tour. So I enjoyed that recording as well. But my absolute favourite is by the Sellers International Band back in Brass in Concert in 2004, I believe, conducted by the great Philip McCann. Now, anybody who's worked with Philip or knows how he works knows that he's a very meticulous and fastidious man in his preparation. So in the run-up to that contest, I did get a phone call from him to ask me about the piece and what are the words, etc., because Philip likes to make sure he knows the words. So that was, the end result was that the band did a sparkling job of it. It won Best March at the contest that day, and I have to say that I think that's my favourite performance, and it's led to, a close friendship and working relationship with Philip over the years. Writing for some of the bands that he's been associated with. So grateful for that.